I'm Tonya McConnell, the co-host of That's My Story. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Georgia Harrison. I had the opportunity of reading her memoirs, including the story of the time that she met the King of Saudi Arabia. But let's start at the beginning. Thank you for joining me today to tell your story.
You're welcome.
So I'd like to first ask you about, can you tell me why you decided to write your story called True Adventure?
Well, I wanted to record it because I thought maybe sometime in the future, some of the family might enjoy reading it.
Nice. So I understand that your dad managed two hotels when you were growing up. Can you tell me a little bit about living in the hotel world?
Well, it was very quiet for me. I had to be quiet. And every morning my father would take me into the dining room and I'd have to say good morning to all the guests there and learn to entertain myself because I was an only child and couldn't have friends in the hotel in the daytime. So,
and I understand you learned how to read quickly.
Yes, I did, because my grandfather was living with us and he and my father taught me to read when I was 3. So I started reading, and by the time I was 5 or 6, I was reading the comics in the newspaper. And that was quite exciting. I liked Mandrake the Magician the best. But apart from that, it was a very quiet life for me. But I interacted with the staff quite a bit.
Nice. So you eventually go to school. Tell me about that. You're sitting in junior kindergarten.
Well, I checked out of school the first day because I didn't like Dick and Jane. I'd been reading for a number of years, and Dick and Jane was more than I could handle. So I left. And my mother took me back the next day, and she said, "You've got to stay. You can't go." So I think that they started giving me something other than Dick and Jane to make me stay.
A little more high-end books, right? To keep you, right? So I understand you left the Cambridge area where your dad had a hotel and you guys moved up to Barrie. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Actually, we moved to Mount Forest first.
Oh, okay.
We moved to Mount Forest and he bought 2 hotels in the area. And again, I was living in a hotel environment, which, is different than living next door to your best friend.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, we were there for, 6 years, I guess. And that was an experience too, because it was a different type of hotel in a small agricultural community.
Okay. So then did you move up to Barrie after that?
Yes, we moved outside of Barrie. We moved to a little community called Brentwood outside of Camp Borden. And my father bought a farm there because he was from an agricultural background in England and he really wanted to get back to growing things. But the thing he decided to grow was tobacco, which is quite far removed from what he was growing.
Right, whole different. And did you go to high school in Barrie?
Yes, I did. I went to high school for 1.5 years in Barrie. And that was quite an experience, being bussed in every day and bussed back, I feel
very different from being in the hotel. Now all of a sudden you're in a big high school.
Yes.
And where did you meet your husband?
I met my husband when we were in the last year of high school in Toronto, because we'd moved then to Toronto. And I did not like him at all. I really couldn't stand him, and he always wanted to be around. And I thought, what is wrong with this guy? I don't like him. I wish he'd go away. But by Christmas, I was dating him. And 5 years later, we got married.
Awesome. So his work took you on several trips all over the world, which I'm excited to talk about. Can you tell me about your first trip that you went with your husband?
The major business that he was involved in at that time was mining. And so he always knew the miners and he wanted to go and see them for some reason. So he took me with him. And we went to this hotel in Sudbury called the Nickel Range. I knew nothing about it. And when we got upstairs and in our room, there was a lock in the door, a key lock. And he went and took the key, locked the door, and went out and left me locked in this room. And I was not very happy camper when he came back. But he explained to me that the Nickel Range was kind of a, shall we say, rough hotel. And he couldn't take me downstairs.
No. So his next question to you is, would you like to go to the Middle East to do some traveling?
Yes. Well, that was a few years later when I had 3 children. One was 4 months old, and they had all had chickenpox together. You can imagine what that's like. And then they got mumps, and I got the mumps too. And I was very, very sick. So when he came back with this question, I recovered, and he said, would you like to go to the Middle East? And I said, I'd like to go just about anywhere at this point. And he said, well, get ready, because we're going in a week, and we're going to have 3 days in Beirut, 3 days in Baghdad, and 3 days in Egypt. And I thought, I could handle that. So I made arrangements for the children to be looked after, and tried to get organized to go, without realizing that my vaccination card was not up to date. So when we were ready to leave the night before, we were racing around Toronto trying to find vaccine, and then up to our doctor's house to have an injection. And then when we got to the airport, we had to go and find where to have this stamped. So it was quite a hassle just getting to the plane.
Yeah, let alone flying to the Middle East. So Georgia, tell me about the experience in Germany airport. Can you explain to me what happens? You've landed.
Well,
such an amazing story.
Yes, this man met us there, Ahmed Al Sadoun, and he was an advisor, a prince and an advisor to King Saud. And he was going to take us to this place, okay? And he stayed with us for the full, we were there for 3 weeks instead of 3 days. And he was a great companion, but he wanted a Canadian wife for some reason. And he was determined he was going to come to Canada and live with us. And I was equally determined that he was not going to come to Canada and live with us. But in the end, we communicated, we wrote for several years. And he kept saying, send me your children, I'll show them Saudi Arabia. And I said, no, I'm not going to send my children to Saudi Arabia, thank you. And he sent me a lovely ring and another watch.
Wow.
But anyway, eventually, I think he went to the States.
And in Germany, can you tell me about what happened? I understand that the plane got stolen.
Oh, the plane was on the runway in London coming to Germany to pick us up, and it was confiscated. It was taken on the runway. So we had a long, long wait for them to reorganize, get another plane for us. So we're sitting in the lounge, and at this point, he pulls out a roll of bills. Oh, I can't tell you, that must have been 1.5 inches thick anyway. And he gave it to me, and he said, here, take this and go and get something for your children. Well, I've been getting teased constantly because I'm there. So they kept saying, somebody's going to take you. And I thought, is he buying me or what is he doing? So I took the money, and Ed and I went, and we just bought some magazines and brought them the whole run roll back. And then he reached down and pulled out a briefcase and put it on the table, flipped it open, and it was like a mini watch shop. It was full of every kind of watch you could imagine. And he said, here, take one, take two, take as many as you want. And I thought, for sure, there's something going on now. Anyhow, I took 2, which I gave one to my daughter recently, and I have one still. Anyway, we got through that and we got on this plane. And our party then was numbering 9 people. So we took up the whole front section, the whole first class section of the plane. And that led to another episode.
So tell me about your friend. You guys are sitting on the plane and she decides to go to the cockpit.
Yes, Rosa van der Linde was a very vivacious blonde German lady and full of life. And she said, we're not going to sit here the whole trip. Let's go and see how this thing works. So we went up and she knocked on the door and they opened it, which they would never do today. And we went in and sure enough, 2 pilots in there. There was another man, but the 2 that I'm thinking of, one was American and one was Canadian. And all the Canadian wanted to do was talk about the Leafs and what are the Leafs doing and where is their standing and on and on and on. And then finally, the American says, would you like to see where Jackie Onassis is living? And I don't know, I'm up in the air, how am I going to see it? So he dives down and zooms over the island that she's on. And of course, everybody in the back of the plane was hysterical because he went down so quickly. And up again quickly. And everybody's yelling. And here we are saying, oh, there's the island. Yeah, beautiful.
Wow, what a great opportunity, right? We'll just take you down and we'll show you.
Yeah, just zoom over.
Just zoom over. So we need to take a break. When we come back, I'd love for you to share the story of the time you and your husband got put into separate limos and how terrified you were. You go one way and your husband goes another. Amazing stories that you have, amazing adventures, especially over in a foreign country. Like you said, you're blonde, you're there, wondering what's going on, right?
Right.
So when we come back, I look forward to hearing those stories. So we're back talking to Georgia Harrison about her experiences. So we're just talking about you're at the airport, you've got your luggage and the limos pull up. Can you tell me about that?
Well, they took us to the customs office first.
Oh, okay.
And we had to hand in all our passports, which was normal. They check your passport. But the thing was, they didn't give them back to us. So we were traveling in a foreign country without a passport. But anyway, they had these limos outside and they put Ed in one and they put me in another one. And I was terrified. It was like in the middle of the night. My ears were clogged from cold and whatnot. And here I am in the back seat with 2 big guys in the middle of the night going in the opposite direction to my husband. And I was really, really frightened. It started off as putting me on guard, like, what is going on here? Anyway, we both arrived at the hotel at the same time. And as it happened, and as it would happen, the hotel was the Cadmos. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it's been destroyed. But it was the hotel owned by King Saud. So all the staff there was King Saud staff. And it ended up being a good thing because we were there for 3 weeks, not 3 days. And the place was under occupation. The streets had, at night, there was a curfew, and there were truckloads of soldiers armed riding through the streets to make sure there was nobody out there. I don't know what they would have done if someone had been out.
Right.
It could have been very unpleasant.
Right. So you're scared, you're in a hotel, you don't have a passport. Can you tell me about some noises and things that were going on?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you about the suite.
Yeah.
They put my father and mother-in-law in a suite at the front of the hotel, overlooking the Mediterranean. It was beautiful. And they put us in the back of the hotel, overlooking the parking lot, which was very interesting, actually. But my mother-in-law saw our suite and she wanted it. So we said, sure, we'll change. We took the, let her have the front one and we stayed in the back one, okay? Which was good because there was activity in the parking lot that you would not expect to see. In the shade of a coconut tree, under a piece of tin, was a family. And they would come out at night and they would, dive in the waste basket at the back of the hotel to get their food. So we used to watch that activity every day. But what was happening at the front of the hotel to my mother-in-law was every morning at daybreak, they started their morning prayers and they would chant from the minaret across the road. So every morning for 3 weeks, she was awake at daybreak, which she didn't really like. But we liked it where we were.
So you ended up getting the better room in the end.
We did.
Less noisy.
Much better.
Can you describe to me about writing notes to your husband?
Well, there was this constant click, 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 click in the room. And because I'm already on high alert from the other incidents, I'm wondering, somebody taking notes or what are they listening? Now, if I had been thinking rationally, I would have realized somebody for me to hear them listening. However, I didn't get that message. I got the message that somebody is trying to do this. And so I started writing notes to my husband. And as you see in the movies, ripping them up and throwing them in the toilet, which later on I found was absolutely absurd. But anyway, It happened that way.
Nice. So you're on tell me about the story. You're on high alert. You're walking in the streets and two gentlemen approach you. You're with your husband.
Yes, Ed had a day free. So we decided to go to the gold market. And we had no idea what the gold market looked like. Well, it was just a narrow street with stores all the way up. Little stores, like 2 or 3 people in the store is making a big crowd. Anyway, we're walking along and coming towards us on the other side of the street is a swarm of men in black flowing robes and running towards us. And Ed grabbed me and opened the door to one of these stores and pushed me in. Well, of course, we're in the gold market. That's a wonderful place to get pushed in. So we're looking around, and I always wore, I don't know if you ever noticed, but I always wore 8 bangles on my right arm. Well, that's where we bought those bangles and a few other things. But I wore them, for 50 years. I just gave them recently to my daughters.
Oh, so, nice. Nice store to get pushed into.
Oh, a wonderful store. And when I was telling someone we were sitting with, he said, well, aren't you lucky that you got pushed into a gold store instead of something else?
So you get your passports back and you're heading to England. Can you tell me who you're about to go meet?
There were telephone calls constantly coming in for Ed, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And finally he got one and he said, get ready, we're going back to London. And I said, what? Well, he said, King Saud wants to meet the contractors that are going to build this development for him. So we're going back and we're going to meet King Saud. Okay. We get on the plane and we go back. Actually, I didn't tell you this before. We're in the airport and we don't know what to do. We don't know where to go or what to do. And there's a machine that says, ask your questions, you know. So I went over and I said, where are we to go? And just then over the loudspeaker, this voice came and it said, Edward Harrison and party come to the such and such a desk. So off we went like a bunch of fools, like we don't know where we're going. And this man is there and he's short and very dark. He's wearing a hat and a raincoat with collar pulled up. Like, you know, this is continuing my feeling of what is going on. So he takes our passports and we're whisked through into a convoy of limousines and whisked away to a hotel. And there we're put in this gorgeous suite. Oh my God, the suite was beautiful. It had a lovely big living room and bedroom and bathroom. And we're sitting there waiting. We were there a day, I think a day and a half, waiting. Well, after all this traveling, this lady that's with us, Rosal Dries was her name, she and I decided that we needed to have our hair done because we looked terrible. So we went downstairs and no sooner had we got wet than the phone rang and it was Ed. Get up here, half an hour, we're going to be taken to the king. Oh my God. So away we went. I've never had a hairdo so quick. Anyway, we got upstairs, got dressed, came down, and there was another limo waiting for us. And in the limo was this little man. And he said, I'm going to tell you what to talk about. Okay. He said, talk about the monarchy and how much you love the monarchy, and don't talk about anything else but that and how much you like them. So we get to the hotel, it's the Mayfair, and we have to take 3 elevators to get up there. The first floor is guarded by the British guards. The second elevator on another floor is guarded by the Saudi guards. And the third elevator is guarded by King Saud's guards. King Saud had about 4 floors there, and all his wives and his, how many sons, 60 some or 50 some sons that he had. So we're in there and we have coffee, and he comes in and he presents us with a gold coin each. And this gold coin is pure gold and it weighs an ounce exactly. And we still have them, thank goodness. But it was quite a show. So we leave that room and go down the hall to a dining room that is very, very narrow, but very long, and a long, thin table there. And I'll tell you about that in a minute, I guess.
So you're at the dining room table. I understand that your husband has broken his shoulder, so he's in a sling, and you're asked a question. There's a scenario that happens in that room. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Well, he broke his shoulder in Toronto because he was at a stag the night before. And of course he fell and broke his shoulder. So King Saud asks the question. He comes in, he's in a wheelchair and he's sitting on my left. And Rosal and I are across from each other. And he asks through the interpreter, what happened to your shoulder? And instead of waiting for Ed's answer, the interpreter said, he fell off his horse. Well, that was a big lie, but anyway. So the king then replied, I will send him a horse. Now, they were very big, and they still are very big in Arabian horses, but I was afraid they wouldn't get it through our mailbox. So,
So you didn't get a horse.
So we didn't, and unfortunately, he passed anyway before he would have had time to do it. But I'm sure he would have done it if he had lived. Yeah.
Yeah. So now your husband's job takes you to Cape Carnaval. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, because I was involved in hanging the doors of that assembly building, huge black doors, we were very much entrenched in the space program. And because of that, when the Americans decided to launch a missile from a submarine the first time, they invited us to go down and watch. So we accepted. When you get on the vessel that's accompanying them, the first thing they do with foreigners or non-sea people is give you a seasick pill and then invite you for lunch, which is kind of strange, but anyway. So when I got on after the launch, and the launch was amazing, but there was a Russian trawler out on the outskirts that kept going up and down, and they kept coming over the loudspeaker for them to back off. And I think they were afraid that maybe the rocket would come up and hit them. I don't know. But anyway, they eventually left and they proceeded with the launch. After the
Nice. So your travels have brought you all over the world, from going gold coins to horses to getting your own special shirts from the Kennedy Space Center. It's been a pleasure listening to all of your stories. It really is amazing what you've experienced all over the world.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.